So, first off, in Wampanoag language, house is we two. So if you hear me say like, "Oh, this we two," I'm talking about house. Every Wampanoag family back then would have two we two, one for the winter, like this one, and one for the summer. Like you guys might have seen a bear skeleton and a bear frame of a house outside. Did you see how that one is cozier, smaller compared to this one? And that's what my ancestors live in the summertime. And that house is going to be covered with woven grass mats. So then in the summertime, if you have a woven covering, it can be cool and let in the cool air. But do we want cool air coming in the houses when it's cold? No, not in the wintertime. So then our people would build bark-covered houses, and they were always bigger. So the words that we would use in Wampanoag would change a little bit when we talked about our winter houses. And it all had to do with how many fire pits was inside. Or, I don't have all the fire pits enough. Can you guys see how many holes we have in the ceiling?
Yeah, 3.
That's right. To peel big sheets of tree bark from. But I'll tell you, this is some of the thinnest tree bark that I've worked with. And that seems to be a growing trend. So if this tree bark came off of a tree about 2 or 3 feet across, imagine the tree bark that would have come off of something like 3 times that size. Like 1 feet. Much thicker. Keeping the house much warmer. Even as it is, this tree bark will last a couple to a few years. The stuff on top, you usually have to replace every 2 or 3 years. All the rest of the tree bark, that stuff can sometimes last like 5, 6 years. But that's a different thing because each piece of tree bark is different. Sometimes you might get a good piece and say, oh, that hasn't rotten yet.
How do you flatten it out? I mean, how does it? It's relatively flat, but it came from a cylinder.
Right. You know, the thing is, when we peel the bark, and in the springtime, right when people are like, everything's waking up and people are tapping the trees for maple syrup, sap's running thick through the wood. So that's when you can cut the size and shape sheet of tree bark that you want, and just use a tool. In my experience, just using a tool to lift up that bark enough to get your hands in, and then we'll run our hands and kind of break the suction of that bark off the tree. And if it's the right time of year, that bark will literally come off that log like just and the weight of it will just it falls like a big heavy carpet. That kind of flexible. And that's how we want to use it. We want to use it when it's that flexible to put it right on the frame of the house, because as tree bark dries, it wants to curl. But if it's on the house, it'll curl and dry to the shape of the roundhouse. But if you wait, then you'll see the edges start to curl up and start to crack and develop splits. But you want to use that piece as big as you can get it.
So you're talking about using it the same day or within a couple of weeks?
I would say a couple weeks max. And then you start to run into problems of big cracks and the bark being really dry. Now, the best way and how people would work to make these houses is build the cedar frame. All these poles are all cedar. So that stuff, we still have a whole lot of cedar swamps around Eastern Mass. And that stuff can last a good anywhere from like 10 to sometimes even 15 years before it starts to rot, break down, and you don't have to worry about bugs through the cedar. Another really cool thing about cedar is these white cedars and these swamp cedars, the grain twists and spirals a lot more than most trees. So as wood dries, it's going to want to split and crack. But because that twist in the cedar is so dramatic, if you do have a split, it doesn't go too far. And that gap doesn't keep splitting. It holds it tight. It's able to hold that weight of the snow and the ice and still keep it shaped really well. Be a nice light covering too.
Besides being decorative, these mats do what for the house?
These are all bulrush. I always like talking about all the uses of bulrush around the world. You can found in stories and different bulls found in the bulrush. Bulrush has little hollow pockets inside of it. So that's why people would use it for insulating mats.
Trap the air.
Because that stuff will trap the air, keep warm air. And see how it's kind of like just kind of lightly, tacked on the walls. And usually, I was always taught these mats were just kind of like kept at a level like this. You'd usually have the mats where you want the hot air to be like kept and trapped, right? So it'd be like right at the level of the beds. Sometimes people would put it, down on the flooring to help to keep, the house from feeling that cold damp that we kind of feel coming from the cold floor. But yeah, those would be some of the most precious things in a family's home, I think. There's, of course, family heirlooms and things that were passed down, but also these mats would become family heirlooms.
It's a lot of work. What was that like for a kid like at that point? Were they out, at a certain age, start hunting and taking care of the home for the ladies?
Yeah, that's the interesting thing. It would be different, Kind of what would happen with kids growing up is kind of like what's still happening with our tribe, with trying to fit in going to school, doing your homework, and all that, good stuff. So usually young kids, would be watched, and usually reared up by clan mothers and matriarchs from different families, and grandmothers talk. Grandmothers talk about everything about everyone,
That's right.
So then they did talk about, hey, this kid's really looking and studying stuff. Maybe we'll try to guide it that way. This kid just runs. He or she is very athletic. Maybe we'll try to gear it that way. And try to take advantage of these things that come up when they do. But I imagine young boys growing up in a family that you'd see dad and older brothers go out in the woods just about every day or out to the ocean with bow and arrow. Like, I want one.
Yeah.
That's right.
I was that same way. So I imagine younger people in the family would get bows, small ones that they couldn't hurt their siblings with or anything. And when they were probably about 4 or 5 years old, if they couldn't act right with it, probably got taken away and then given back. One thing that young people were kind of like, oh, would you like to help out? Maybe you could do this. A lot of the kids were encouraged to go out and play around the garden and the planting area. So certain little structures were even built just for kids to do just that.
Really?
Overlook the corn, maybe practice archery on little rabbits, take little pot shots at rabbits that might be nibbling at the squash and stuff. Or maybe you just like a song that you'd like to sing really loud. The crows are coming around. Sing that song again. I just planted. Yeah. I don't want all that seed to be torn up. Maybe if you want to learn how to set traps, kids would be encouraged to set traps around that garden.